Good morning, everyone. My name is Janet Thompson with Janet Thompson Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine, and I'm really excited today to be delivering this webinar on reducing anxiety through the five senses. I am particularly passionate about this topic for a couple reasons. I personally have dealt with bouts of anxiety periodically, and here in my acupuncture practice, I see a lot of people, especially these days during the pandemic, who are having unusually high levels of anxiety. So I work with people who have both chronic, intense anxiety and more sort of episodic anxiety. And it's one of the things that really has long-term impacts on health. So it's really crucial for me to help people figure out a variety of ways to deal with their anxiety. So I was excited to put together this webinar. The five senses are really a great suite of ways to get the anxiety levels down and the stress levels down. So let me go to the next slide. So welcome. What we're going to be covering today, we'll start with some grounding breath work to anchor us a little bit. I'll spend a little bit of time covering anxiety and its impacts. Then I'll go into ways to reduce anxiety, and I'll finish up with some additional resources. If you are the kind of person who needs more help than the self-care, I have a whole number of healers and other experts on one of my slides to help you move forward with reducing your anxiety. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So as we start the grounding breath work, what I'd like you to do, if you're settled into a good place, ideally, hopefully you're in a place where you can close your eyes and be calm for a moment. I'd love for you to put your feet flat on the ground, or if you happen to be lying down, pick up your knees so that your feet can rest flat on the couch or the bed or the floor, wherever you happen to be receiving this information. So keep your eyes closed, and we'll start by just feeling your breath. Breathe in and out just a few times. Okay, and next I want you to be aware of the soles of your feet touching the ground. And I want you in particular to focus on the area between the heel and the ball of your foot. So the part that's up in the arch a little bit. And feel the contact of that part of your foot on the ground. And the next breath you take, I want you to breathe calm energy from the earth up through that sole of the foot, through the ankles, knees, hips, and into your low belly. And then you'll exhale any anxiety or agitation down through the hips, knees, ankles, soles, and into the ground. And we'll repeat this a few times. So you'll breathe in calm energy from the earth through the feet and ankles, knees, hips, and low belly. And you'll exhale any anxiety, agitation, or stress through the hips, knees, feet, and back into the ground. Again, breathe the calm energy through the feet, through the soles, ankles, knees, hips, and into the low belly. And then exhale down through the hips, ankles, knees, feet, and deep into the earth. And now we'll just take a few regular breaths. And you can open your eyes when you're ready. So this is a grounding breath work that I use for anxiety, stress, agitation, any feeling where the energy of your body is really coming up. It's rising up. Your thoughts are in your head. Your thoughts are in your chest. Your sensations are in the chest and the upper body. Using this grounding breath work helps to anchor everything further down. So that is a pretty key way to help relax yourself. One of the ways to manage it is to use this breath work when anytime you're feeling anxious. You can also set up a practice where you're doing it in the morning or in the evening before bed. And you can do that breathing through the soles of the feet and then back down through the feet for as long as you want. So we did 3 breaths through the feet. You could do 5 or 10. You could try to do 5 minutes of breath work through the feet. It's whatever feels manageable and supportive to you. So I wanted to talk briefly about the impacts of anxiety. If you have experienced anxiety, if your loved ones have experienced anxiety, you know that it's just plainly absolutely miserable to feel. And it makes it really difficult not only to be in your own body, but to interact with other people. It's hard to be in social situations if you're anxious. It's hard to be around friends and family if you're anxious. And certainly it's really hard to achieve what you want to achieve, whether it's being loving to your friends and family, whether it's pursuing a career goal, whether it's developing yourself on a personal level. All of these become a lot harder when your body's locked up in that anxious state. And furthermore, when you are anxious for long periods of time, your body gets stuck in a fight or flight state. And what this means is your body is anxious because it's sensing that there's a threat. And so your body goes through a whole host of physiologic changes to adapt to that threat. So what happens is your blood pressure raises, your heart rate gets faster, your body actually shunts your blood away from the digestive system more towards the muscles so that you can deal with whatever attack is happening. Your body also increases your blood sugar levels so that the sugar in the blood is more available to the muscles to use if you're literally needing to fight off an aggressor or in some sort of threat situation. And all of these are fine for the moment, but if these occur long term, they don't support your healthy ongoing development and easy aging. So for example, if you're consistently in a state of stress and your body is shunting blood away from the digestive system, that means you're not able to digest your nutrients properly and to really make good use of the foods that you're eating. Similarly, if your heart rate is continuously fast and your blood pressure is high, it's going to put excess strain on your heart. And long term, we know that's not supportive for us. And lastly, research shows that anxiety does have an impact on immunity. So when you are in a continual state of fight or flight, your body is putting all of its resources towards being able to fight physically, but it's not putting resources towards long-term maintenance and things like supporting the immune system. So that's why it's really important that we deal with anxiety before it gets too bad and try to reverse it from the state it's at to get us back to a calm level. So today I'm going to cover five different modes, our senses, and ways that we can get calming through those five senses. So for touch, we're going to cover some acupressure points. For scent, we're going to cover some essential oils. For taste, we're going to talk about some herbal teas. And then we're going to look at both sight and hearing and find out what we can use to calm our bodies. Now, the body is really receptive. So when you're around, you may notice if you're walking down the street and there's someone nearby and there's something about them that makes you feel unsafe, that's your body taking in information. Whether you know on a gut level or whether you see something strange, your body is always picking up information. And so what we want to do is find a way for all five of your body's senses to know at once, I'm safe, I can be calm, right? So when we're combining all of these five senses, we're telling the body through every input, every way that it can get input, that everything is actually okay. So we're going to talk later about combining these modalities so that you get the most calming practice. So we're going to start with acupressure points. For those of you not very familiar with acupressure, it uses acupressure points or acupuncture points that have been developed over several thousand years in China. And these are points on the body that are known to have a specific effect on the body. So there are points that are used for digestion and for pain relief, but we're going to focus on ones that have an emotional benefit. And acupressure is wonderful because you can do it for yourself, and you can also have other people do it on you or for you. So if you have loved ones, whether they're young kids, partner, parents, you can actually help soothe them by applying this acupressure, and you can do it to yourself any time of day. And what you'll do is simply press on the acupuncture point for 30 to 60 seconds, maybe a couple minutes, and then just enjoy the benefits. So it's really that simple. You could do it anytime, any place. So I know some people on this webinar know a couple of these points, but I'm going to hit my top 5 points for calming. And I'm going to start with my all-time favorite, which is in the center of the forehead. I'll lean in a little bit so you can see. So if you go from the eyebrows right to the center of the forehead, above the nose, this place is, it's called yin tong in Chinese medicine, and it's used for anxiety, agitation, overwhelm, basically any sort of irritated, overwhelming emotion. And you can press on it with your finger, you can massage it with your finger. And one of my favorite things to do if I'm lying down or doing a lying down meditation is to take a small object and just rest it on that part of the forehead while I'm lying down. Sometimes, to be honest, what I do when I'm in bed and I'm meditating is I just rest a pillow over the top of my head, but make sure that it's covering this spot so it feels dark and I get this pressure on this spot. It's whatever works for you. This is also the kind of spot that you can use if you're agitated on public transit, if you're sitting in a work meeting and maybe you don't have your camera on. This is a good point to use. And as always, make sure you're breathing while you're using it. Okay, so that's point number one. The second point I'd like to show you is on your hand, and you'll look at your hand this way as we do, but I'm just showing you this way. So this point is on your palm, and if you make a light fist, you'll find where the pinky touches the palm, that's your point. And it's in the fleshy spot, basically in between the bones where the pinky finger and the ring finger come down. It's in that fleshy spot. And you can, again, you can press it, you can pulse it a little bit, or you can massage it. It's whatever feels right. This point is actually on what's known as the heart channel in Chinese medicine. And it's a bit of, we call it a fire point. So if you think of those fiery emotions that come from the heart, intense agitation or anxiety are sort of two of the main ones. You can think about those points literally leaving out this point, traveling from the heart down the inside of the forearm and out through this point. So you would probably want to use both hands, and we'll switch in a moment. And again, don't forget to breathe while you're doing this. I know we can focus on one thing, but make sure you're breathing as well. And then we'll move to the other hand. So again, you take your hand, you make a light fist, and where your pinky meets the palm, that's your spot. And you'll press, massage, whatever feels good to you. And if it's a little bit tender, that's okay. You don't have to wail away on the point. As long as you get a little bit of response, like you can feel that you're there, that's plenty enough. And also, as you can see, this picture I have on the slide is actually this point on the heart channel with a little green sticker. The next point I want to show you is a little bit tricky to find, but it's a really important point for any sensations you have in the chest, emotion sensations that are based in the chest. So again, in this range, this could be anger, it could be stress, it could be anxiety, it could be an overall sense of tension, anything really from the diaphragm up through the heart. That's what this point is used for. And this point is also very well known for its effects on nausea. So if you do suffer from nausea in addition to stress and anxiety, this is a good point for you. So it'll take a few steps, but I'll show you. It's going to be on the inside of your forearm. And as you can see, if you look at your forearm, you should be able to see these two tendons that are right next to each other. You might, if you make a fist, sometimes you can see them a little better. And the point is going to be in between these two tendons. And how you find where it belongs on those two tendons is you'll take 3 fingers from the other hand, put the top finger in the wrist crease, right where the hand meets the forearm, and where the bottom finger ends, in between those two tendons, that's your point. So I'll show you one more time in case that's tricky. You're looking for the spot in between these two tendons on the forearm. You take 3 fingers from the opposite hand, put them right on the wrist crease, and then where the lower one ends, doesn't have to be super exact, but actually you'll probably feel it. If you're sliding up and down these tendons, you'll find a spot that has a little more power to it. It might be sore, it might just feel sort of powerful in a way that you can't describe. That is this point. It's called, in Chinese medicine, or in the English version of Chinese medicine, it's called pericardium 6. And it's a wonderful point, again, for nausea, for stress, for anxiety, and for any feeling that's overtaking your chest. So we'll press this one for a little bit. For me, this one's a little bit tender. You know, it may differ every day which one you feel is more or less tender. And this one is actually, it can be easier to use if you hold the forearm in your hand and then just press that spot with your thumb while your arm is resting in your hand. All right, we'll move to the next arm. I'll show you this point one more time. So you'll take your second arm, You'll look for the space between these two tendons that you can find. Again, you'll use 3 fingers against the wrist, and where the bottom one lands, where the 3rd finger lands, that's where this point is in between the 2 tendons. And as a reminder, this is good for almost any form of emotional overwhelm, and especially feelings that come up in the chest. Okay, so those are the first 3. I want to show you 2 more points. For the next point, we're going to need your foot. So if you have slippers or socks on, we need to get to the sole of your foot. Take the shoes off. Don't have to have your camera on. Just do this in your own home. I will show you my foot for reference so we can help find the point. So this point that I'm about to show you is fantastic for grounding. And so we can pair it with that grounding breath work that I showed you in the beginning. And the way you find the point, so here's your foot. You'll look at the bottom of your foot and you'll start between the 2nd and the 3rd toe. And you'll just draw a line down past the ball of the foot until you fall into a divot. It should be pretty easy to find. Again, start between the 2nd and 3rd toe and just draw down past the ball of the foot until you fall into a divot. This point in Chinese medicine is called kidney 1, and it's the so the kidney channel connects to our root energy that's based in our lower abdomen. And this point is the connection point. It's where we draw energy up from the earth to feed our energetic bodies. And so this point is very wonderful for nourishing ourselves, but also as a connection point to the earth. So when we do that grounding meditation, one of the things I love to do, again, showing you my small object here, I have a little rose quartz heart. And what I'll do is put it on that spot, and then I'll put my foot flat on the ground. And so what I feel is a little bit of pressure under the foot, so I really feel that connection to the earth. And it'll help draw that anxiety down in the same way that our grounding breath work did. So if you combine those 2 together, using that specific acupuncture point that's in the sole and that meditation where you're really focused on bringing calm energy up from the earth and bringing your anxiety down from the body and sending it into the earth, that can really help rebalance. The last point I want to show you is on the top of the head. And this point is fantastic because it's good for both depression and anxiety. I work with a lot of people who have a combination. In any given day, they're dealing with both depression and anxiety. And this point, which I'm about to show you exactly where it is, you can use so it's calming for the mind. You can almost think of it like a portal that opens and just literally lets the steam out like a kettle that's boiling. You just let the steam out of the top of the head when you activate this point. But it also brings up beneficial energy from the body. So when you're in a depressive state, you have trouble getting good, positive energy that's uplifting. In Chinese medicine, we call it the clear energy, but it's the beneficial energy that you can rise up. So this is good for balancing both the depression and anxiety. So how you find it is you'll trace your ears and you'll find the top highest point of your ears. You might just roll back and forth a few times along the ears. So when you get to that highest point, what you'll do is take your 2 fingers, I have so much hair, it's a little hard to see. You'll take these 2 fingers and you'll travel directly up, and where your 2 fingers meet on the top of the head, that's where this point is. So it should be in line with your nose if you travel that line back. And again, you take the highest point of the ears and you just travel your fingers directly up until they meet at the top of the head. Hopefully your fingers meet when you get there. We call this point in the English version of Chinese medicine, we call it Du 20, and it's a fabulous point on the top of the head for depression and anxiety. And this one again is good. It's especially good to use at the end of a meditation because it does have a little bit of awakening that it does. So you get the awakening benefit while still maintaining the calming benefit. So I want to pause for a second. That's the 5 acupressure points I wanted to show you for anxiety. And I want to make sure that there are no questions before I move on. So if anybody has a question about how to access those acupressure points or how to use them, feel free to unmute and shoot me a question. All right.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How long do you suggest holding these particular pressure points?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say as long as it feels helpful. I would say I always say at a minimum 30 to 60 seconds. If you do have the ability to do it for 3, 4, 5 minutes, that's also great. You know, part of this is sort of connecting with your body and feeling for you what helps to settle the body. So if you're pressing the points and breathing at the same time, you should be able to feel your body settling a little bit. I would also say, Ginger, if we're doing a handful of different points, if you're just using one point and you want to use it for a few minutes, that's great. If you plan to use a few different points on your body, then you could do a little less time on each. So you could spend a minute on each and spend 5 or 6 minutes total. Thanks for the question. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to move us on to our next topic, which is scent. Some of you have realized by now, I'm sure, that scent is a very powerful connector to the brain. It's the kind of thing where you may be at a restaurant and someone walks by and they smell just like that person you used to know. And all of a sudden, in an instant, you're back in that place with that person. Smells an incredibly powerful activator of memory, of mood. You may have noticed that certain smells are nostalgic. Maybe you walk through somewhere and there's a rainy smell that reminds you of where you grew up, and you all of a sudden have a flashback to that place, right? Smell is super important. And so one of the excellent ways to activate our smell reflex for calming, or our smell sense for calming, is to use essential oils. There are a handful of essential oils that are called nervines. And what that means is that they're shown to actually adjust the nervous system's response. So the 7 essential oils I've listed here are fabulous nervines. And that's why you hear all the time about lavender body products, lavender body sprays and room sprays and diffusers and teas. Lavender is one of the most common calming herbs that we can use. So essential oils are just one way in which we can activate lavender and be able to receive its benefits. Bergamot, for those who aren't familiar, it's actually a citrus. It's the smell that you get in Earl Grey tea. It's sort of a cross between floral and citrus. So that's what bergamot essential oil smells like. Palmarosa and vetiver, many people don't know the smells, but they're luscious and wonderful, great for calming. Geranium you may be familiar with from your yard. Rose, certainly many of us know the smell of rose, and chamomile. I think most people are familiar with chamomile tea, but the essential oil is very similar smelling. So if you like the smell of chamomile tea, then chamomile essential oil might be a good option for you. Now, what I recommend, so you don't break the budget, if you know that you like one of these 7, go ahead and get that oil. If you're not sure, I think lavender and rose are a great combination. You could pick a couple that you think might resonate well for you. You can also look them up online and look at the different benefits that they bring and see if some resonate more with you than others. I do want to take a few minutes and talk about how we actually use essential oils, because for some essential oils, they're not to be taken internally. You don't eat or drink them. And if you put them directly on the skin, some oils for some people can create a skin reaction, so you want to be careful about how you're using them. So the first way to use essential oil is, which is super easy, is in an essential oil diffuser. And that's a device that you can buy online, certainly. I'm sure you can get them in Target and other places. You can get one for, I think, 20, 30 bucks. There are some fancy looking high-end ones, but you can just get a small functional one. And it's basically a vessel with where you put water in, and it'll tell you how many drops of essential oil to add, and it'll create a bubbling action so the water and the essential oil steam out. And so what that does is it will fill your whole room with the aerosols from the essential oil. So that's a wonderful way if you're in a place, if you're in a place for a certain amount of time, whether it's your office or a certain room in your house or your bedroom, you may want to just get that essential oil diffuser plugged in and get these calming agents circulating throughout your house. I would say if you're a parent with kids who struggle with anxiety, making sure that you find one of these calming oils or a blend of them that work well for them and getting a diffuser in their room is really key to help get them that calming background. Another way to use them is in a bath or a foot bath. So if you're using a full bathtub, taking a soak, You'll use maybe 10, 20 drops maximum. And that should actually be, doesn't sound like a lot in the scope of a bathtub, but that should be plenty to activate the smell and also to bring some of those oils directly onto your body. If you're using a foot soak, which I do recommend for a lot of people, especially if your feet run cold or if you have tired or achy feet, a foot bath is a wonderful way to rejuvenate. And in a foot bath, because it's smaller, I would say 3 drops, maybe 5 if you're using a larger bath or bucket or something for your feet, but not too many because it can really be caustic to the skin. You can also use them topically on your body. And what you need to do is add a carrier oil. So basically, again, because these essential oils can be too strong directly on the skin, you want to mix them with a teaspoon or so of another oil. You could use whatever you have in your house. If it's olive oil, if it's coconut oil, those two are both great. If you happen to have something like sweet almond oil in your house, that's also wonderful. And what you'll do is just take a teaspoon of the carrier oil in your palm. You'll put in a couple, 3 drops of the essential oil, or maybe one of each, right? You might do lavender, 1 drop geranium, and 1 drop rose, and mix them together. And then you have the carrier oil and the essential oils safely in your hands. And there are a few things you can do. One is just to actually sort of place a hood over your nose and smell. So you can cover your hands in this scented oil and just breathe that calming smell. These days also, if you are wearing a mask outside, which I hope you are, you can add a drop or 2 of essential oil directly onto your mask. Maybe not the bulk of the mask, maybe put it on the lower edge or something so it's not interfering with the filtering, but it'll allow you to take these really luscious calming scents into your brain while you're walking around or doing your work or your grocery shopping. The other thing you can do is apply this blend of carrier oil and essential oil to the acupressure points. So you might put a little dot here on yin tong, put a little dot on do 20 at the top of the head. You've already covered the spot on the heart channel. Maybe you put a little bit between the tendons for pericardium 6, and you can dab a spot on the underside of your sole. You can also coat the mixture on the bottom of your foot and then cover it with probably old socks, just so you don't get oil on any of the surfaces that your feet are touching. But that's a wonderful way for your body to absorb some of the calming of the essential oils, and you can also get the smell in through your nose. So I'm a big fan of essential oils. I've seen that they have a really powerful effect, especially when the right oils are chosen. Now, if you're the kind of person who, oh, I hate the smell of lavender, don't worry about it. Lavender's not for you. There are plenty of other choices to pick. So go ahead and get creative with it. The next slide I want to cover is on taste. And this list is going to look a little bit familiar. Again, these herbs have a certain, we might call it a profile, a set of properties. And so whether you have the herb in a tea bag or whether you have the herb distilled into an essential oil, it still has the same nervine properties. So some of the most popular herbal teas you can use for calming, again, are chamomile and lavender. Lemon balm is another beautiful one. It's in the mint family and the leaves are really delicious. And then the last 2 I have on the list here, kava and valerian, are calming, but they're also known to be sedative. So these are not great teas to take in the middle of the day if you're about to go for a drive, if you're experiencing anxiety because you're about to perform. You know, unless you're really, really anxious, you probably don't want that much of a sedative impact. So maybe you only have a little bit of a cup, or just be mindful of when you're using teas with kava and valerian root. But otherwise, all 5 of these are great. If you're the kind of person who wakes anxious in the morning, having a cup of this kind of tea early on is fabulous. And then again, of course, if you struggle with insomnia or difficulty winding down your brain and your thoughts before bed, all of these 5 teas are wonderful. There are a couple tea brands that I love. No financial connection. I just love the teas. Traditional medicinals and yogi tea, both I think make really pure and high quality teas. And they both have a whole bunch, thankfully, of calming and stress relieving teas. So I've listed these on the slide. Traditional medicinals, you have Cup of Calm, and then they have individual tea bags of lavender, lemon balm, and chamomile. And then yogi tea has a couple different stress relief teas, and then a calming and a chamomile tea. So these are easy ways to incorporate some of this calming into your day. If you like to get more connected with the herbs, you can actually use the raw herbs. Certainly you can buy chamomile, lavender, and lemon balm online or in local stores, and you can actually put those leaves and flowers into your tea and steep with hot water if you want to be a little bit more connected with the herbs. But if you're in a rush, the herbal tea bags are fabulous, and I definitely recommend those. All right. So there's a bunch of research out there that shows that a couple things. One, that connection to nature really lowers our stress level. And furthermore, that just viewing scenes of nature also reduces our anxiety, our stress, and our blood pressure. So this is actually wonderful news. For those of us, those of you like me who live in an urban area, we may have to be a little bit thoughtful about how and when we can get exposure to nature. But I want to talk about a handful of ways that we can do it that are easier so that you can get that connection and the relaxation benefit more easily. So the first thing is nature immersion. So this means taking a trip to the local beach, going to a park. It could be even looking out the window if you have a window in your house or your office where you can see trees and actually spend time looking at them. That's a great way to do it. If you're lucky enough to have a backyard, that's also helpful. And just spending some time in nature, whether you want to walk or sit, just be. Research shows that the more that you engage with the natural surroundings, the more relaxation response you'll get. And that's sort of what I've been talking about this whole time in this webinar, that we get input from all our senses. And so if you're say you go to the beach, and you're listening to the ocean waves, right? It's hard to not notice the lovely repetitive sound of the ocean waves. You might also be paying attention to smelling the water spray, the salt spray that's coming off the ocean. You might have your hands or your feet in the sand, maybe pick up some sand, rub it through your fingers. So you're engaging on multiple senses. Maybe you can almost taste the salt spray if you're close to the ocean, or if you actually go in, you can certainly taste some of the salt water. So you're really engaging with all your senses in your natural surrounding. You could do the same if you're walking in the forest. You're listening for the bird song, you're looking at the trees, you're smelling the pine needles that are underfoot. You might want to touch something, pick up a leaf, feel it, really engage. And this helps in a couple ways. One, when you're so engaging all five senses, you don't have time for your brain to be in all the other places that it goes, all the bad places that it may be going that are adding to your anxiety. And secondly, again, your body's picking up all these inputs that say, it's safe, we're calm, this is our natural environment. So if you can make time, even if it's briefly, 10 minutes or ideally more, to get into nature, that's really helpful. The other thing you can do, there was some really interesting research in Japan and Korea where there's a really high population density in the urban areas, not a lot of access to nature, and high levels of stress and anxiety. And what they found doing experiments is that people who looked at a scene of nature received also some of the stress and anxiety reducing benefits. What they think is happening is that the patterns that appear in nature, so if you look on the slide at the trees and the water, patterns appear and reappear in nature. They're called fractals, the way these patterns emerge. And so that's the way a leaf forms in a certain way, the way the branches are arranged on a tree. And our brain resonates with those fractals. And it's just, I don't know what the connection is, but seeing these unique patterns that are all over in nature helps our brain relax. So while you might have a painting of a natural scene, it's probably not going to work as well as if you have a photograph of nature, because those distinct and accurate fractal patterns are really what your brain needs to reset. So again, a desktop screensaver, a poster above where you're working, something in the kitchen or the living room, wherever you spend time and feel like you need to calm down. Those are great places to have pictures of nature and to actually engage and spend time looking at them. Take a minute and do some deep breathing and just look at the scenery and allow your brain to engage and go there. Another way that I love engaging with nature is through guided meditations. I love that these days you can find any kind of guided meditation under the sun on YouTube. I definitely recommend it. And you can search for a guided nature imagery meditation or nature meditation. And what you'll find is the person who's guiding you will have you imagine in detail as you're meditating going into a calming spot in nature. So they might tell you, imagine that you're walking down to the stream and you're seeing the trees over the stream, and you're hearing the water trickle over the rocks as the stream rushes along. And so you'll spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, really immersed in your head in the nature scene. And that also brings stress and anxiety down. So if doing it through a guided meditation where they sort of are doing some of the work for you in a way, and all you have to do is receive, that's a great way to get some stress reduction. The last thing I want to cover is a little bit of a separate line of research, but people are beginning to realize these days that we are very overstimulated, especially compared to how our brains were inundated 100 years ago with information and then what we have now. We are taking in so much information through our phones, through faster paced work, through more activities in any given day, and our brains are really bombarded with information on a level that they haven't experienced before. Our brains are not evolutionarily adapted to receiving and processing in a healthy way all this information. And so one of the things we need for stress and anxiety reduction is blank space and blank time in our lives. So I'm not sure everybody's patterns. I don't know everybody on this webinar totally well. So there may be some people who actually have time in their day, feel like they have time in their day to take a break and process. And there may be other people who feel like they are on the go from the second they wake up until the second they hit the bed. Either way, it's a question of dose. So even taking a 1 minute break when you're at work, when you're doing childcare, whatever the answer is, and looking at either a blank wall or if there's a small section at least of your home or your office where it's visually calm. So maybe it's a soothing color paint on the wall or wallpaper. Maybe you just have 1 or 2 objects on that wall and it's calming. When you look at it and you think about it, your body can relax a little bit. Spending 1 or 2 minutes or more if you have it, just engaging with that relatively open visual landscape helps the brain to adapt and balance out from all the other stimulation we're receiving. So in addition to connection with nature, just getting sort of a blank slate at several times throughout the day, if we can, helps you come back to your body and lower the stress response, helps your brain cope with all the overload. So I'll move to the last piece here, which is sound. Again, you're sensing the nature theme here, but nature sounds, again, do help to lower the stress response. So thanks to the magic of Spotify and Pandora, and again, YouTube, you can stream just about any kind of music you want. And there are certainly, at least on Spotify and Pandora, there are nature channels, nature stations. So you can look for just about everything you would want, whether it's a soundtrack of ocean waves, a soundtrack of rainstorms. I know some people who are from back east or areas where you get thunderstorms actually feel really soothed by having that sound. Again, bird song or just leaves rustling, you can get all of the above. You can also stream either meditation music or spa music, and that usually combines nature sounds with singing bells or flutes or other soothing music. So you might have water trickling with also flute music over top. Whatever to you feels most calming is a great sound to add in. There are a couple times in the day where I'd recommend making sure that you have time to put this sound on in the background. One is if you struggle with falling asleep at night and you're prone to trying to watch TV to fall asleep or listen to an audiobook, those can be a little bit overstimulating sometimes, but nature sounds you can put in and focus on them and they'll help the brain relax a little bit. Another time I would suggest if there is a task that you do every day or every week that you really don't like, and it creates additional stress, whether it's like dishes or laundry, whether it's a particular work thing you have to do. If you have the ability to put these calming sounds in the background, again, all of these pieces add up. So you can have these sounds on and overall bring the stress level down bit by bit. Even if it's sort of in your subconscious, it's still helping. So putting it all together, I've talked a little bit about how it's important to tell all of your 5 senses at one time that we're safe and it's okay to be calm. And so I wanted to talk about how we can combine some of these modalities into daily life. So one way to do it is to compound several of these things at once. So an example would be, you wake up in the morning, whether you're feeling anxious or not, you take a moment to go put the hot water on to make herbal tea, and you find a calming herbal tea in there somewhere. What you can do is, while that water is brewing, while the tea is brewing, you can put some essential oils on your acupressure point and activate that while you're drinking the herbal tea. You could put on your soothing sounds in the background while you're drinking the herbal tea. Again, we talked about, for example, being in the forest or in nature and making sure to engage all of your senses at once. You could use a nature-based meditation, guided meditation, as we talked about, the nature imagery. While you have that on, maybe you have your small object resting on your calming acupressure point, right? That's another way to do it. Or you could do things sequentially, where you take a bath and stream calming sounds, get out and have some herbal tea and activate one of the acupressure points. What I would recommend, if you are someone who struggles with anxiety on a daily basis, that more frequent times throughout the day, taking small breaks to do some of these tools will be helpful and additive. So what you'll want to do is, maybe you set an alarm, or maybe you know, okay, when I wake at lunchtime and then right before bed are times that I can take a minute, 3 minutes to incorporate some of these practices. That said, if all of this is not enough and you find that your anxiety is still not well controlled and you need more help, I wanted to talk through the resources that I have on this slide. I'm a big fan of everybody I've listed on this slide, so I did want to talk them through for a moment. First of all, hi, I'm Janet Thompson. I do acupuncture and herbal medicine, and as I mentioned before, I work a lot with both kids and adults in my practice who are overwhelmed with anxiety, stress, anxiety, and depression. So this can be an additional, relatively non-invasive step for people who are having trouble getting anxiety under control. My colleague Lorie Solay, who I think had to drop off the webinar, she does mindset coaching and hypnotherapy, and she has a focus on stress and anxiety. I can vouch for her work directly. I've used her work for probably 3.5 years now, and she's just incredible at the number of resources that she has, and the ways that she can help. She also does have tools to help with trauma recovery. So if some of the anxiety is coming from trauma, Lorie is a fantastic person to reach out to. And she also has a separate meetup group called Temple Loam, L-O-A-M, if you're not already a member, where she goes through a variety of health and healing topics, including stress and anxiety, and deepening a spiritual connection. So that's Lorie's work. If you are interested in learning more breathwork, breathwork is a tool that's been used in many cultures for a long time to activate different types of healing. Breathwork is also known as pranayama. I have a colleague named Sachi Doctor who runs a practice called Elemental Alchemy, and she teaches breathwork. She's an Ayurvedic healthcare specialist, so she can help you with seasonal practices, with diet, and a whole host of things. And she's a fabulous healer. I recommend her work if that speaks to you. If you've been looking for a meditation coach, I know Paul Bosky. He's here in Oakland with El Guia Meditation, and he helps people find what meditation approach works for them. So some of us have tried one type or another and it hasn't stuck for whatever reason, but we want to commit. He will explore with you what type of meditation will work best for you and coach you so that you get it to become a rhythm for yourself and an ongoing practice. when the pandemic eases up a little bit, my colleague Devin Flordejean with Diva Flora is an amazing massage therapist. She also has a strong essential oils practice, and her work focuses on calming the nervous system. So when it's legal for her to be out doing massages again, I would save her information and give her a call if you need a full body, full nervous system reset. Her work is really top notch. And then last but not least, my colleague Tamara Nakjavani does Reiki and energy healing. And so she, again, uses these practices for stress and anxiety relief, as well as balancing the whole body. Reiki has been shown in studies to reduce stress levels. So it's another tool to add to the arsenal. So that's the list of additional resources. And I'd love to move into questions if anybody has questions. Feel free to unmute or use the chat box if you'd like to write in a question. I'm happy to field anything you'd like.
Excellent. Excellent. I've heard some of these things before, but it was great how you put it together. And I can just picture myself with the music on and some lavender spraying, standing like this with my finger, you know, lying down, meditating and touching all my spots.
Love it. I'm glad.
No, it's great to integrate it. I mean, yeah, I know when we're driving in the car, we can only probably do one little thing. But if you're home and you're feeling anxious, these are all good tips, and I'm going to try to integrate them.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear it, Ginger.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll get off the face.
Angelica, did you have a question too?
No, not at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining. You can always contact me at the information that's on the slide if you have any other questions. You can shoot me a question through the Meetup group, Bay Area Holistic Family Health, if you have other questions. And I will be putting out some more resources soon. I'm reading a little more research on the connection between diet and mental health. Again, that's anxiety, depression, ADHD, OCD, all these different conditions. And some researchers are finding a strong connection between what we eat and how that affects our mental health. So I'm hoping to put on a webinar on that in the future. So stay tuned. And then if there's anything else you'd like to learn about, drop me a line and let me know. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to end the recording and have a wonderful Saturday. Bye all.